It was supposed to be a chance to reset things. Darian needed to know where he came from, I told myself. Maybe a summer in Flatlick would remind him that family was still family, even if the definition had gotten blurry over the years. I thought it'd remind me, too. Loretta had grown older, more brittle with time. Maybe she'd softened. Maybe, just maybe, she'd see Darian for what he was, mine, but also hers. I'd been wiring her 30,000 a month for the last 2 years. No questions, no receipts, just trust. Because I figured love looked like provision. It was my way of saying, I'm here, even if I don't live here. Maybe it was naive, or maybe it was the last little sliver of me still hoping she'd say thank you, just once. That Tuesday night, I called him like always, FaceTime. He answered, his little face dimly lit by a weak hallway bulb. His eyes looked tired, the kind of tired I recognized because I'd worn it my whole childhood. Hey, buddy, I smiled. You eat already? He hesitated. Grandma said dinner is for grown-ups today. I didn't flinch. Not in front of him. Oh, what'd you end up having then? He shrugged. Nothing, I guess. I swallowed something sharp. Okay, well, maybe she meant later. He nodded like he wanted that to be true. I told him to brush his teeth and kiss the screen with my fingers. When the call ended, I sat still. Not crying, not yelling, just frozen. The sentence rang in my ears. Dinner is for grown-ups. That wasn't forgetfulness. That was a rule. A rule someone had taught her once, and she now passed on like family silver. I called Loretta right after. She didn't answer. I didn't call again. The next morning I tried one more time. She picked up. Her voice was light, casual. He's fine, Keldon. You always overreact. You know he's not starving. We must save money. Save money? I asked, not hiding my tone. I've sent you 30,000 a month. Where's it going? She scoffed. You live in the city now. That kind of money doesn't stretch like it used to. There's mouths to feed. But not his? You always think everything's about him. No, I said quietly. I think everything should include him. I didn't argue further. What was there to argue? She saw me as a bank, and him as a, what? A passenger? I hung up, and I sat there thinking of the years I spent hearing, this is for the family. The way my name always got left off the guest list, the way my plate was always smaller, the way silence was expected of the one who gave most. The first betrayal is silence, the second is repetition. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering when exactly I stopped asking for anything in return. Did I just grow out of asking to be loved? Was sending him there a mistake? All I'd wanted was for Darian to have a grandmother, to belong to something older than me. But what he was learning wasn't love. It was exclusion dressed as tradition, and I had paid for it, wire by wire, hoping it would look different from what I knew. I thought about when I was his age, always last in line, told to wait, told I was strong enough to not need more. But now, silence didn't feel like strength. It felt like betrayal. If I didn't speak now, I wasn't shielding him. I was repeating the harm, quietly. I sat up, turned on the lamp, and opened my laptop. I pulled up my bank history and began to make a list. Every transfer, every note, every time I told myself this was normal. Because this was the night I stopped justifying what should have never been acceptable. If dinner was too expensive, I wanted to see what else my money didn't buy. Back in Raleigh, I sat at my desk for what felt like the 100th time that week. Only this time I didn't open work emails or Darian's school portal. I opened my bank app. I scrolled through every wire transfer, every $30,000 batch I'd sent on the first of each month like clockwork. 2 years, no receipts, no questions, just the same name in the notes line. Household support. It had become routine, like brushing my teeth. Only now, my stomach turned. I pulled up an old email from Loretta years ago, back when she first asked for help. She'd attached a spreadsheet back then, called it a family budget. It was outdated, missing half the years I'd been funding them. Still, I clicked it open, staring at those old categories: groceries, utilities, medical, grandkids. It was like a museum of misdirection. I sent a quick text to Cressida. Hey, you seen an updated version of Mom's expense sheet? I made it sound casual. She didn't reply. And in my head, I heard my father's old voice, dry as gravel. Only fools give blank checks to the ones who burned them once. That evening, I drafted a message to Loretta. Hi, Mom. I just want to make sure everything's being covered properly, especially for Darian. Would you mind sending over the updated ledger, just so I can keep things organized on my end? She replied 3 hours later. No greeting, no warmth, just a one-liner. See attached. I opened the file. Same template. New entries. It looked official. Home repairs, insurance, medical bills, education support. April, $12,200. Groceries. Under grandkids, I saw names. Kayla, Owen, Maya, not Darian. I searched the whole document. Nothing. Not his school, not his snacks, not even a birthday line item. April was when Kayla, Thurston's daughter, got that new iPad. Cressida had posted it on Facebook with the caption, "Thanks to Grandma's support, Kayla's ready for virtual learning." That one $200 wasn't for my son. It was for the one sitting at the main table, the one who didn't go to bed hungry. I replied, "Thanks, I'll take a look." Then I forwarded it to Denise, my accountant friend at the firm. She called me 5 minutes later. "Keldon, if you're asking me whether this is equitable, the answer's no. It's a family-run grant system where you're the funder and everyone else is a silent beneficiary." I didn't need a second opinion. I just needed confirmation. Later that night, I FaceTimed Darian. "Hey, bud, did Grandma get you anything new for school this month?" He thought for a second. "No, just what I brought from home." That was it. They weren't even trying to hide it. They were using me, not out of desperation, but design, like it was built into the family structure. The next morning, over coffee, I called Cressida. "Hey," I said, "have you seen the budget Mom sent?" Long pause. "Not really. I don't look too close. You know how Mom gets. She says I'm causing drama if I ask." "So no one ever asks." She hesitated. "Not if they want to be invited to Sunday dinner." That one stung a little. I ended the call with a polite tone, but inside I felt it. The walls weren't just paper thin, they were rigged. That night, I started building a new spreadsheet. My own this time, transfer dates, amounts, labels, every dollar traced. 2 years, $720,000. Not a cent itemized for my son. I opened a folder on my desktop and named it Contingency. In it, I saved copies of the ledger Loretta sent, screenshots of the iPad post, the blank space where Darian's name should have been, a PDF of the iPad invoice Kayla posted. The kind of details that don't win arguments, but end them. If I have to burn the silence to protect my child, I whispered to myself, I will. Some people keep journals. I keep records. And the moment I found proof my son was invisible on paper, I knew what I needed to do next: watch the house from the outside. I called in a favor from an old friend who used to run tech support for a private firm. He owed me one, and I cashed it in, not for a new phone, not for a network upgrade, but for something smaller. A nanny cam shaped like a motion detector, easy to install, easy to forget. I drove back to Flatlick under the pretense of dropping off some of Darian's clothes. Loretta wasn't home. That helped. I walked into the kitchen, stood there for a moment, looking at the same counters I'd once stood beside as a child, too small to reach the toaster. I placed the device high up, out of sight, right near the fridge. The irony didn't miss me. Legally, it was my house. My name was on the deed. I paid every bill. What I was doing wasn't illegal, but it felt like crossing a line I hadn't wanted to admit existed. As I pulled out of the driveway, I whispered to myself, if you can't trust people to tell the truth, you capture it. Back in Raleigh, I logged into the remote feed the next night. It was late. My apartment was quiet. I sat on the couch, laptop glowing in the dark, a cup of cold coffee untouched beside me. The kitchen in Flatlick looked just the same, too clean, too staged. Loretta was there, bustling around, preparing plates. I could hear Cressida laughing off camera, probably helping. Thurston's kids ran in and out of frame, carefree, comfortable. Then Darian walked in. He moved quietly, like he'd been taught to not be noticed. He glanced around, then stepped toward the fridge, opened it slowly, reached in. Loretta turned, fast but calm, and shut the door with one firm motion. "That's not for you," she said. "Ask next time." That was it. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't curse. She didn't even look angry. But it felt colder than any yell could have been. She turned back to her task. Darian stood there a moment, then stepped away. I watched that moment 3 times, then a fourth. "She's done this before," I whispered. And I knew that not because of what she said, but because of how effortlessly she said it. A memory hit me so hard I had to put the laptop down. 10 years old, my cousin's birthday, reaching for cake, and my mother, Loretta, placing her hand gently but firmly on my wrist and saying, "Wait till they all eat. You're not starving." That wasn't food control. That was hierarchy enforcement. This wasn't about groceries. It never had been. It was about place, position, permission. Loretta didn't withhold food because she was struggling. She withheld it because she believed, somewhere deep down, that some of us hadn't earned the right to ask. "My mother didn't forget how to love," I murmured. "She just never learned to love me equally." I didn't scream, didn't cry, but something inside me hardened, again, like bone growing where soft tissue had once been. I opened a notebook and wrote one line at the top. "Every time she made me feel small." This wasn't nostalgia. It was evidence, and I was done pretending I couldn't see it. I clipped the video. 31 seconds, labeled it Fridge, 8:13 p.m., sent it to Denise with one line. "Tell me I'm not imagining this." Her reply came in minutes. "You're not. That's abuse in passive voice." I hovered over a group text I hadn't used in years. Thurston, Cressida, a few of the cousins. I drafted a message. "You all need to see this." Then deleted it. Not because it wasn't true, but because I didn't need them to believe me anymore. I started building a folder, clips, spreadsheets, screenshots, old bank statements. This wasn't family reconciliation. It was case preparation. The camera wasn't just a tool, it was a witness. Later that night, I called Darian. "Hey, bud," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did Grandma say anything when you looked in the fridge yesterday?" He nodded. "She said, 'That's for people who pay for it.'" I didn't answer right away. That sentence, it hit harder than anything else I'd heard, because it didn't sound like something she made up on the spot. It sounded like something she'd believed for years, and passed down. I have paid more than enough, I thought, teeth clenched. What I haven't paid with, what I won't pay with, is silence. "You'll be home soon," I said to Darian. "Just a few more days." I opened my calendar and marked the date, circled it in red, labeled it Start of Peace, and the next thing I needed to know was what else she was hiding in plain sight. I was just finishing up a client call when the bank notification hit my phone. Large withdrawal flagged 26,170 pound. It had already gone through. I stared at the screen, breath stuck somewhere between my chest and throat. That account, our joint account, was supposed to be for household emergencies. Loretta insisted on it when we first set things up. "In case the water heater bursts or the roof needs patching," she said back then. This wasn't a leaky pipe. I called the bank. No error. No fraud alert. The transaction was confirmed, completed under Loretta's authorization. I asked for the merchant auto dealership, not even a local one. It was out in Corbin, the kind of place Thurston always talked about but never seemed to afford. "This wasn't a slip-up," I said aloud, slow and steady. "This was strategy." I clicked open the account history and scanned for anything else, a car repair, a home improvement loan, anything that might excuse this. But there was nothing. And in my gut, I knew where that car was. I didn't ask Loretta. I didn't argue. I just made a call to my cousin June, who still lived in Flatlick. Hey, I said casually. You been by Mom's lately? Yesterday, actually, she answered, distracted. Why? Just wondering if anything's new? Oh, she perked up. You didn't hear. Thurston got himself a new SUV. Thing's a beast. Leather seats, heated everything. Parked right in Mama's driveway like a trophy. That's when it clicked. Like the last puzzle piece that doesn't even need to be pressed, it just drops in. The money wasn't for Darian. It wasn't for the house. It was for Thurston. I imagined my son, sitting on the floor at dinner time, while my brother rolled through town in a brand new vehicle bought with my money. He got leather seats, I whispered. My son got crumbs. I opened the group family chat. Loretta had posted a photo last week, some vague saccharine caption, feeling blessed for this family. Thank you, Keldon, for your ongoing support. Support, that was the word they always used, as if I were some grant, some invisible donor. No direct thank you, no mention of Darian, just support. I pulled up the bank statement again and saw the dealership name. Googled it. Called. Hello, I said. Can you confirm a recent vehicle purchase under the name Thurston Straley? After a brief hold, they confirmed it. Yes, fully paid. Used funds from Loretta Straley's account as primary. My joint account, collateral, my balance. My silence had bought his ride. Entitlement doesn't apologize, I muttered, sitting back in my chair. It parks in your space and calls it inheritance. I picked up the phone and called Thurston directly. No answer. I sent him a message instead. Did you know the money for your car came from me? Or did you just not care? The message was marked as seen. That was it. No reply. I could see him in my head, his shrug, his smirk, the way he'd say, "Well, you're the one who always wants to help." Like help was a weakness, like decency was a debt. That night, I called my lawyer friend, Julia. I need to separate that account, I said, and I want to freeze it until we do. Julia sighed. I've seen this before, Keldon. Families that treat one person like a credit card and call it love. I'm done, I said. Good, she replied. Let's start. But I told her to give me one more week. I needed time, time to gather, to print, to line it all up. I pulled out the whiteboard from my closet and started mapping it. Date of transaction, vehicle photo, withdrawal confirmation, Loretta's post, and that night Darian didn't get dinner. Red lines connected the dots, like a crime scene. Only this one came with birthday cards and casserole dishes. Justice needs more than fury. It needs a file. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight. My back ached. My eyes burned, but my mind was clear. If money was their language, I was finally learning to speak it fluently. The text came in late Friday night. From Loretta. Sunday dinner if you're around. No greeting, no apology, just the same old tone, like nothing had happened. I stared at it for a few minutes, rereading the message without blinking. She hadn't called since the last time I confronted her. No mention of the SUV, the account, the fridge, or Darian. And now this, like she was offering me grace for showing up to a table I was bankrolling. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I drove to Flatlick alone Sunday morning, left Darian there for the weekend, just as I'd done many times before. But this time, I arrived early, picked up a pie from the diner on Route 11, something I used to bring when I was trying to keep the peace. Old habits. I walked in with the pie still warm and a polite smile stretched across my face. I wasn't there to eat. I was there to observe. I reminded myself of that as I handed the pie to Cressida and got a half hug in return. As more family trickled in, Loretta directed people like it was a seating chart she'd memorized. Thurston and his wife took the main table, set in the dining room with cloth napkins and candles. Their kids, loud and proud, took spots without hesitation. Me and Darian, We were guided to the kitchen counter, 2 plates already set, no chairs pulled out, just space for us to sit with our backs to the others. Loretta didn't say anything. No one did. Darian looked at me but didn't ask. He just climbed onto the bar stool and sat down like it was normal, like he was used to it. I helped him up and handed him his fork. I glanced toward the main table. Thurston was talking about his SUV again, laughing about the heated steering wheel, bragging about how Mama made it happen. Loretta beamed at him like he was the mayor. My hand clenched around the fork in my lap. Someone in the back murmured, "Well, at least the kid's getting food now." I didn't turn to see who said it. Even crumbs feel like charity when you're seated at the edge. After dinner, while folks cleared plates and Thurston went on about his job prospects, Darian walked over to Loretta with a folded piece of paper. "I got a 98 on my math test," he said, grinning. Loretta glanced at it, nodded slightly. "Good job," she said, and tossed the paper into the trash with her napkin. I didn't react. I stood still as a stone. Then I walked over, opened the lid, and pulled it out once everyone had turned their backs. I folded it slowly and slid it into my wallet. The only thing dirtier than the floor was the hierarchy in this house. I sat down again next to Darian, who was finishing a cookie. I didn't tell him what I saw. I just kissed the top of his head and wiped a crumb from his lip. Later, after dessert had been passed around the main table, I watched as Loretta cut the last slice of pie. She looked around and said, "Oh, Keldon, you want a piece?" I nodded, and she handed me the smallest one left. I remembered my childhood in flashes, always sitting near the kitchen, being told to wait, watching the others get served first. I used to believe if I worked hard enough, became successful enough, I'd finally earn a seat at that table. But you don't earn a seat in a system built to forget you. Darian leaned over to me and whispered, "Why do we sit here?" I looked at him, kissed his cheek, and said, "Because we see everything from here." On the way back to Raleigh that night, Darian fell asleep in the back seat, his mouth slightly open, clutching the test paper I'd tucked in his backpack. I stopped at a gas station just past the county line, went inside, washed my hands, and looked at myself in the mirror. There was no anger on my face, no sadness either, just a calm that came from clarity. I'd spent years thinking silence was peace. But silence in the face of cruelty isn't peace, it's cowardice. They don't call it survival when you stay quiet. They call it surrender. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed, "Reallocation of household responsibilities." It wasn't a declaration, it was logistics, a new phase, one with boundaries, one they would feel. The next time they served dinner, it would be with notice and a warning. The email popped into my inbox at 11:07 p.m. It was the same monthly statement I'd been receiving for years. Usually I'd click and close it without even scrolling, habit built from trust or maybe laziness. But that night, I clicked. The numbers glared back like a spotlight, small withdrawals repeating week after week. Family support was the label, some for utilities, some for miscellaneous, and one for art supplies at $280. Darian hadn't brought home any new markers, any sketchbooks, nothing. I scrolled further. The account was still marked as joint. Loretta listed as co-holder. My name first, hers second. This was the account I opened in my early 30s, back when she said she just needed help with the house bills. I never removed her. Never thought I'd have to. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I built the door." She kept the key. When I walked out of my office to check on Darian, he was at the kitchen table, coloring quietly under the lamp. He showed me a new drawing, a family portrait. Everyone smiling except a small boy in the corner, head down. "Who's this?" I asked softly. "That's me," he said without looking up. "Grandma said not to draw myself too big." I felt my throat tighten. Did Grandma like it? He paused, then, "She said I drew the couch wrong." Then she threw it out. I reached into his backpack and found the crumpled page, faint pencil lines still visible. My son was coloring his self-worth with broken crayons. I didn't say anything. just sat next to him, tracing the small figure with my finger. The next morning, I called the bank from my office, requested a temporary freeze on the joint account. The rep hesitated, reading disclaimers. Technically, ma'am, she still has access unless you remove her entirely. I'll remove her, I said. Send me the paperwork. I printed every transaction since the account opened. Dates, vendors, totals. Opened a new spreadsheet on my computer and titled it, What Was Taken. By noon, a binder was forming on my desk. Bank statements, screenshots, Darian's drawing, receipts from dinners, even a still image from the nanny cam of Darian at the counter. The binder was heavy, but it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a weapon. When your pain fits on paper, it becomes undeniable. I thought about every time Loretta told me not to make things bigger than they are. She wasn't minimizing problems, she was minimizing me, and I had been letting her. That night, I rehearsed what I would say when I confronted her. Then I closed my eyes and rehearsed saying nothing at all, just showing her the binder. Later, I sat with Darian on the couch. We're going to take a little break from visiting for a while, I told him. He didn't cry, he just nodded. Will I still be allowed to draw what I want? I hugged him and said, You never needed permission. When he went to bed, I opened my journal and wrote one line. My silence has expired. I zipped the binder shut and placed it on the passenger seat of my car, ready for the drive to Flat Lick. This time I wasn't going to ask. I was going to act. If she thought she was the only one keeping records, she was about to learn how wrong she was. I pulled into the driveway at Loretta's house with the engine still humming, heart steady, breath calm. Not because I wasn't angry, but because the anger had calcified. I was past boiling. I was past shaking. I wasn't coming home. I was walking into a court I never consented to. Darian was already inside, crouched in the corner with a box of crayons. Loretta looked up when I walked in. The surprise in her eyes lasted half a second before it vanished beneath that rehearsed smile. Well, didn't know you'd be joining us today, she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. I nodded, offering nothing but silence and the binder under my arm. I didn't put it down. Not yet. We went through lunch like nothing was wrong, but every bite tasted like dust. Loretta started it with a soft jab between bites of cornbread. Some folks like to keep records when families should keep faith. I didn't flinch. And some folks like to erase others while calling it loyalty. Thurston chuckled and chimed in. Not everything's about your kid, Kel. I looked at Darian, eyes down, his fork pushing peas he wouldn't eat. I turned back to the table. What exactly has he done to deserve less than your kids? Loretta stiffened. Don't start this at the table. It's always at the table, I said. That's where the seats are assigned. No one spoke after that, and that silence, thick, loaded, said everything. After the meal, Loretta motioned for me to follow her down the hall. I did. She closed the door gently behind her, then she turned to me, arms crossed, tone low. You act like that boy is owed something, she said. But you forget. He's not really ours. My hands froze around the binder. Excuse me? I asked, calm only because I'd gone numb. You had him with someone who never belonged in this family, she said. That boy's not blood. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Not because I didn't have words, but because none would have been enough to explain the pit that opened inside me. You don't have to be stabbed to know when you've been gutted. That evening, in the motel room I booked instead of staying in her house, Darian sat on the bed, legs swinging. He looked up and asked, Did I do something bad? I crouched in front of him. Why would you say that? Grandma said I asked for too much. I just wanted more paper to draw. I hugged him like I was holding something that had cracked in half. This ends, I said to myself. Now. I pulled out the binder, laid it open on the bed. Bank statements, meal logs, receipts, drawings, my own notes. This is what we've been giving, I told him. And this is what we're stopping. He didn't say anything. Just looked at the pages, the timelines, the photos. Children know when they are unwanted. They just don't always have the words. Later that night, when he was asleep, I sat at the small desk in the corner of the room, opened my laptop, typed an email to my attorney. Subject line: immediate action required. Attached the digital version of the binder, labeled the folder Family Audit. I dreamed of the dinner table again, but this time, I wasn't standing at the edge. I wasn't sitting quietly. This time, I cleared the whole thing. I woke up with one sentence in my head. Love does not demand silence, not anymore. She thought saying he wasn't blood would break me. All it did was confirm what I needed to do. Loretta called it a celebration, a community dinner in Thurston's honor, complete with catered barbecue and printed thank you notes. The invite list stretched long: cousins I hadn't seen in years, neighbors who barely remembered my name, church friends who still whispered like we lived in a town that mattered. It was held at the community center. Balloons tied to folding chairs, paper tablecloths, lemonade in plastic dispensers. I showed up with Darian, both of us in clean clothes, nothing fancy. No one greeted us. No one mentioned our names. On the welcome table was a stack of thank you cards. With gratitude to Cressida for her unwavering support. Not me. Not even once. Not a signature. Not a mention. I had funded the event, paid the caterer, booked the room, and I was invisible. They used my money to erase me, and printed proof. I sat through the speeches, one hand wrapped around my clutch. Inside was the binder, my armor. Loretta stood proudly at the mic, praising Thurston's resilience, his journey. She spoke of family unity. Guests nodded like they were watching a sermon. No one said Darian's name. People looked at me the way they look at guests at a wedding who don't belong, present but not included. My therapist once told me, "You don't need to shout when you have facts. Let the silence work for you." So I waited. Dessert was served. Laughter rose. That was my moment. I stood, walked calmly to the microphone. "Before we end tonight," I said, "I'd like to say a few words." The room stilled like someone had hit pause. Loretta's mouth opened, but I raised one hand. I opened the binder on the podium. "This is a list of every transfer I've made to this family in the past 3 years," I began. "Over $800,000, broken down by category." I flipped pages slowly, let the numbers breathe. "Here's the ledger Loretta sent. Notice anything?" "My son's name is missing." Murmurs started. I flipped again. "Here's a screenshot of a thank you card mock-up that was accidentally emailed to me. My name was removed from the final print." A few people started to shift in their seats. "And this," I said, holding up a still frame from the video, "is Darian alone at the kids' table. Again." I paused. This isn't about revenge. It's about reality. Loretta rose from her seat, stormed to the stage, snatching the mic. "You're ruining your brother's day." I didn't flinch. "He ruined my son's years," she hissed. "You're embarrassing us." "For what? A child that's barely one of us?" Gasps echoed around the room. I turned to the crowd. There it is, the real seat assignment, written in bloodlines, not bonds. I closed the binder gently, picked up my bag. "You don't need to flip the table when you've already pulled the receipts." And I walked out. Outside, the air was cooler. Darian stood near the car, arms folded, waiting. "You okay?" he asked. I knelt. "Better than I've been in years." That night, back in Raleigh, I emailed my lawyer the cease and desist letter, sent a private folder to the whole family titled Audit and Archive. I began the process of closing the joint accounts, revoked Loretta's power of attorney, cleaned house. I wasn't a daughter begging for love anymore. I was a mother defining worth. The next dinner they host, they'll pay for it themselves and seat themselves accordingly. The drive back to Raleigh felt quieter than usual. Darian had fallen asleep halfway through, head tilted against the window, one hand still wrapped around that card I gave him, the one I wrote myself, thanking him for choosing strength. No music played, no calls came in. The silence wasn't heavy. It didn't hang in the air like guilt used to. This one felt earned, Settled. When I got home, I unpacked the binder first, no longer filled with bank statements or timelines, just a few loose papers I hadn't tossed yet. I placed it on the top shelf of my closet and shut the door. It wasn't a weapon anymore, just a witness to something I lived through. My phone stayed silent all weekend. No texts, no emails, nothing from Loretta, not from Cressida or Thurston either. And for the first time, that silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Sometimes the loudest healing happens when no one calls to apologize. The following week, I got an email from Darian's teacher. Simple update. He'd been quiet in class, a little distant. I thanked her, and I waited until after school pickup before bringing it up. He climbed into the car, buckled in, and then asked, "Am I the reason the family broke?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at him, really looked. "No, baby," I said. "You were the line they didn't know they weren't allowed to cross." That night, after he went to bed, I drafted an email to the school counselor. Nothing dramatic, just enough. Explained that some recent family conflict had made things harder for Darian, that I was handling it. Then I opened another tab, legal name change form. I'd been thinking about it for weeks, about what it meant for Darian to carry a name that didn't protect him, didn't claim him. I chose Graham, my grandmother's maiden name, the one who used to sneak me extra food under the table when no one was looking. I told Darian the next morning over breakfast. "Your name should come from love," I said, "not inheritance." He nodded once, like he already understood. Blood may bind, but choice defines. One evening, I sat on the balcony with a mug of tea and an old notebook. I started writing a letter to Loretta. I didn't plan to send it. I just needed to get it out. "I loved you enough to give," I wrote. "You loved me enough to take. That's not a relationship. That's a transaction." I thought about adding more, but stopped. Instead, I ripped it out of the notebook, folded it, and set it in a metal dish I kept near the planter box. Lit a match. Watched it burn. Forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. Sometimes it just means I stopped bleeding. The ash floated up like it had somewhere else to be. She won't say sorry, but I won't need her to anymore. Later that week, I cooked dinner. Just me and Darian. Mac and cheese, roasted broccoli, apple pie, his favorites. We ate at the dining table, no distractions, just full plates and real presents. He asked, "Are we still a family?" I said, "Yes, baby, a new one we built, and no one can unbuild it." Then I handed him a small card I'd written in my own handwriting. "Thank you for choosing to be strong." He read it quietly, then smiled. I didn't need anyone else to witness that moment. It was ours. The next day, a message popped up on my phone. From Loretta. Short. Cold. "Do whatever you need." I didn't reply. I deleted it. By that weekend, the locks on the house had been changed. The title transferred. Her name taken off the deed. No courtroom. No public showdown. Just quiet, clean ownership. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. And I got it. That night, I sat on the porch with Darian. The sun was setting behind the trees. For once, I wasn't thinking about what came next. I was just there, finally on my terms. If you've ever had to choose between blood and peace, you're not heartless. You're just brave. Have you ever walked away from family to protect yourself or your child? Tell me below. I read every story.